G'day everyone, we'll get started in a few minutes.
Happy time of day, Jock.
Yes, it is time of day. It seems to happen after time of day minus n and proceed then into time of day plus n. Have you ever
Exactly.
noticed that strange pattern? It just keeps happening. Give it about another minute or two and then we'll kick off. All right, let's kick it off. First order of business is, would anybody like to be the scribe for this meeting?
I can give it a go.
I saw you struggling mightily with the terrible weight. The second part of the agenda is we always like to welcome people who are new faces, new friends, as we like to call it. If you're new and you'd like to introduce yourself, or perhaps you're just returning for the first time in a while, feel free to pop your hand up and say hello. Looks like it's all familiar faces. All right, so let's turn to the first item on the agenda, which was the question of logistics. And by logistics, it's mostly agenda logistics. What we're trying to do now is to raise items for the agenda through the GitHub repo. So we're trying to create something of a paper trail and allowing discussion to occur asynchronously is the thinking there. Please feel free to open new issues on the repo with agenda items you would like to discuss. That helps us, as I said, to keep track of things over time. The main focus, as we know, has been the threat model or the threat modeling over the last several weeks, months even. But first in the agenda list of items is the ingestion manifesto. Folks probably remember that this was brought to us maybe a month or two ago. And the ingestion manifesto was essentially, as an ingester, I commit to these things. Issue 5 is a great place to give some feedback. Joshua kicked that off with a question about recall. I was wondering if anyone wanted to sort of talk about that analogy recall, if that rings a bell to anybody. Maybe I should try and dig out the manifesto link for folks. Give me a second.
Yeah, I think I can speak a little to that somewhat, and we don't have to keep that. My camera keeps turning up. I think recall is something like Brian Fox has used a number of times, and sort of the idea there, but maybe we need to explain it a bit further, is not like a physical recall of software, but sort of the way a recall notification works when there's a defect or a safety issue with a product. So where the manufacturer has the responsibility and the liability to communicate that defect to customers, versus sort of the de facto approach today, or at least like when you look with the executive order, and some of the other legislation in the US, where it's basically like, let's just ship this with a, you know, an SBOM or a bill of materials, and then the customer needs to look through that and determine if something is there. And so the idea is that by a customer tracking their consumption of open source, they can much more easily identify that themselves, meet that responsibility, and then communicate to the customer the way another manufacturer would. We can add that in, we can remove the recall language, happy to do either or, but I don't know if that helps.
Any thoughts? Speaking only for myself, I think it causes more confusion than gain just at the second, would be my feedback. And I'll leave that on the issue later, as that's the best place to do it. Yeah, it's just sort of hard to, like, I guess I follow the analogy, but also it just doesn't feel quite the same in the sense that I can't send a signal that makes my software come back, you know, or makes people uninstall something, if that makes sense. I don't know, what do other people think?
So yeah, I kind of agree. Just looking at it, reading through it now, the latest version. I haven't seen the recall wording, but I wonder if this could be genericized, adopt and develop open source consumption management tooling and processes that support you know, rather than using the word recall, which could be confusing. I don't know. I'm just trying. I'm struggling to think what it could be, but I just wonder if it could be rewritten without the word recall to incorporate that notion, that idea that we will be working together on developing the tooling and the processes that support a more robust, you know, set of mechanisms for handling vulnerability problems as they arise, you know, rather than talking about recall.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable. I've been away from this for a couple weeks because I was on vacation. So if you want, I'll take a look. I'll take these suggestions. I don't think recall is necessarily needed. I think the spirit of it is, again, that like driving a commitment to understand your consumption so you can better communicate, right? Like, which is the spirit of a recall at the end of the day, right? Because you can't, even if you recall a product, you can't force anyone really to bring it in. The magic of a recall is that you've communicated something through any number of pipelines or channels to say, hey, there's something here that may be unsafe, or there's something that's defective and needs to be repaired. Here's the issue. Make your judgments about it. We recommend you bring it in. So again, we don't have to recall. We don't have to get wrapped around the axle, so to speak, to use an auto metaphor. But I think to Dan's comment, maybe we can capture the spirit of that in this here.
Herb?
Yeah, one way somebody could, you know, issue this air quotes recall would be through technologies like VEX. That's a way to describe that there's a problem and kind of how the component is affected. And the foundation has an implementation of VEX called OpenVEX, but that's a way that, you know, a good citizen of the open source community could be, as I have problems, I use signaling like VEX or something to share that with the downstream.
Yeah, I think that's good too. And I mean, you know, thinking from like the vendor aspect and more the responsibility of the manufacturer, less that like there's this vulnerability that exists in open source, because that doesn't indicate in exploitability, right? At the end of the day, there's so many nuances, and that's the thing we're trying to get away from. But yeah, I think to your point, like the CVD process, with CISA, like sort of aligns with that too, where it's, how do you even begin to start that disclosure process if you have no idea what you're consuming? So I think that's the spirit of this. So I can take all this. I think there's enough here to remove recall and capture the spirit with maybe even an example or two that like Rob and Dan mentioned.
Cool. Productive chat. Any more sort of thoughts about the recall language on the ingestion manifesto, or would we like to move on? All right, let's move on. So the next one is issue number 9, which is the threat model. This is sort of like a placeholder or an identifier for the work that's been done. I've linked there the working doc from the SIG that's been working on this. It's good reading. As it says there, we need more people, and I am guilty of not going because I am slack and a terrible person. No, just slack. Actually, I'm a fine person. I'm just slack. There is a new time for it coming up. I'm not sure what was meant by update new threats. Perhaps Henrik knows.
Yeah, I can. Hi, everybody. I can say a few words. So first thing is, so the vote is open. I think we circulated the doodle last week or so. The vote is open until Friday, tomorrow, but it looks like Monday, 6:30 European summertime will be the new schedule, which is a little bit more friendly for people from the US. So that is the one thing. We will start with this new schedule as of July. I think it's the 2nd or the 3rd. But let's see, maybe there are another 20 people voting until tomorrow evening on another day, and so it will not be the Monday. Let's see. So far, it's just 6 people or so who voted. And the other thing is, yes?
I was just, I wanted to remind that July 4th is a holiday here in US. Right, the Tuesday, if we want to start maybe the next week, just pointing it out. I know we wanted to start a new schedule, so.
Yeah.
It's the Tuesday call.
I thought so. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. So if we go for Monday, it would be July 3rd, but I guess that many people
will be
maybe
out.
take the bridge day and
Yeah.
it will be out nevertheless. Yeah, true.
Yeah.
Yeah, true. So yeah, can also do it the week after, which would be then the 10th or so. And yeah, the second maybe update on the document itself is that we shifted a little bit gear in the sense that until last week or this week, we basically developed and discussed all those threads together and added them while being in this workshop. In the meantime, John added another bunch of threads to different systems of this development infrastructure. So I guess this will accelerate the content creation, but then of course changes a little bit maybe also the nature of those meetings. So we rather go into reviewing, which will still be a lot of great discussions, I suppose. I did the count just a few minutes ago. So by now we have like 20 something different threads listed in this table-like format. But yeah, let's see, maybe some of them will be merged or split or maybe disappear altogether in later versions. That's it from my side.
Sure.
I've been lucky enough to mostly participate with Henrik. He's been leading us through the exercise, and I would encourage everybody to take a look at the work. And if you have inclination, please try to participate. I think this is really valuable work for a work product for this group to kind of share with the community at large. So please participate if you can.
I actually had a question. How do you see this fitting into the initiative of yet undetermined name, formerly known as Sterling Toolchain?
Well, fun fact, I think that this work will be probably the second next step that group will take is once we decide what the heck we're doing with the security tool belt or whatever, the Goosatron, We will then start to decide on some security architecture principles we'd like to be the foundation of our work. And then we would go in and do a threat modeling exercise to understand how we can break the system. So I think the work that Henrik and the team have been doing will be invaluable and will help inform a lot of that and accelerate that work going forward, that we can potentially have a laundry list of already identified problems and start to think about what solutions might we have or what recommendations can we make to avoid. So I think this work will be very useful in the coming weeks for the tool belt thing. So even more reason people should participate.
Just want to check when we talk about tool belt, if people feel like they know what we're talking about, or is that a mystery? Yeah. Okay. Cool. I'm going to flick it back to Craig if you'd like to give a potted summary.
Certainly.
If you can.
So I can. So the governing board last year decided they wanted to kind of set some direction to help motivate the working groups and inform the work of the foundation moving forward. And the idea initially was the much hated name Sterling Toolchain. So that's why, Jacques pokes fun at me. We're trying to figure out a name for what to call this thing. But the TLDR of it is essentially developing a reference architecture for how open source software should be developed, managed, and then consumed. And then we'll do activities like threat modeling to identify where we might want to try to spin up additional projects or groups to help focus in on some of those problems. Gives us an opportunity to identify what existing work we have. And then, wherever possible, there might be opportunity for partners potentially to fill some of these needs to help ensure we have some of these capabilities, like a secure CI/CD system, potentially. Maybe there's some open and closed source solutions that might help a consumer or a producer and help them have that capability. So that's what we're trying to have a unifying idea of how we can motivate the work of the foundation going forward. So that's the whole security tool belt idea. And I'll post a link to the meeting notes if anyone is interested in participating. We've got about 15 folks that have been helping us kind of shape this idea so far. Many of these smiling faces here on the call, but patches are always welcome. We would love feedback, and especially as we get into more of the architecture and threat modeling pieces of this exercise. I'll definitely need some seasoned InfoSec opinions on helping us make sure we're doing things right.
Does that help, Henrik? Cool. Any more thoughts about the threat model and the threat model work that folks had? Oh, we're making good time today. That brings us to number 8, which is the technical charter. I'm going to just pull that up on my screen so I have correctly in my head what we're talking about. Oh, it's a very short message update charter. I'm not sure what was intended by that. Does anybody have more context on this one? I'm a little caught off guard. Okay, so I feel like we'll have to revisit that one in a future meeting to better understand what the intent was.
So I can maybe try to do, right? I was working with John about this, and he mentioned that we should open like an issue to see and review the technical charter and make necessary updates, that are required for it from the team. So that's why, I had opened that one, and anybody who wants to take a look and review with this team or the threat modeling team that joins on the other weekly call can add and update and review. And we want to make it a little bit more robust, and comparing with other OpenSSF, charters and looking at it. And I did actually. It seemed almost similar to me, to be honest, but anything that is makes it much more specific for our team here, end user working group, as well as for the threat modeling to be extended, and making it more detailed, and the orientation towards that would be helpful. That's the idea behind that. Yeah.
Right.
And so we are requesting participants so, to do the reviews and updates with that, as you deem fit. Yeah.
Yeah. Things like the charter and the group's README file are just invaluable to document what the group's doing, so that new participants can potentially be enticed to come in. And then the charter helps define how this group wants to operate. So it's important to have these things documented, like, do we want to hold votes, or how often do we meet, this type of stuff. So documenting so that participants understand kind of what the guidelines are for how we operate. So it's very important. And again, much like the threat modeling, I would encourage participation here. Take a look at that, give some good feedback of how we want this community to work, and then make sure we get things in the README so that external people that are kind of browsing the foundation, trying to find where to hop on, they can have a clear understanding of what we're doing and how they can contribute to that.
Yeah. I think we should look at the guidelines on how we are going to engage with the engagement model with external, as well as what would be the decision points, and how we are doing the controls to keep it clean and open for everybody, and without any bias, if I might say, because we all come from different organizations, as you all know. So those are the main things that we want to make it much more detailed or clear for everybody to feel like it's open, as well as open for ideas, and extending it and expanding it. Yep.
Sort of interesting. I wonder if there are sort of like particular concrete thoughts or concerns that would help sort of gather us together around it. It's a pretty detailed document.
I think like a session to do sprint spike session, kind of, to sit on it, and like Henrik does with the threat modeling doc, keep working and making it.
I'm always reluctant to spin out another group.
Not a group, just a meeting that is oriented towards just working on the doc, like one call.
Well, I guess the thing is, like, what sort of perception of future trouble would bring people to the meeting? What is it that we're worried about? At the moment, this to me is pretty much the standard boilerplate that everybody adopts and then ignores.
Yeah.
Dan?
Can I offer an opinion? I think this, because I mean, looking at it, actually, it's quite generic. In fact, it says the mission of this technical initiative is to mission statement, right? I mean, so however, like when I came into the OpenSSF, I was used to looking at charters as a way to understand what technical work is going on in a group. And that's just because in the other initiatives that standards initiative I've been involved in, like W3C or IETF, that tends to be listed in the charter, right? Like the working mode and the kind of deliverables of the group. Whereas I think in this, in general, in OpenSSF, the charter is more like there to talk about how the group runs, and is not necessarily talking about the content. But I really think it should be talking about the content for exactly this reason that Krob mentioned, that to make it more friendly to use to external people who may not be familiar with OpenSSF and how we're working. So the first thing they're going to look at is they're going to look at this repo, they're going to look at the README, and they're going to look at the charter, because charter is like, especially if you're familiar with working groups, then you might look at the charter. And I think it is important to have some info in there. I'm happy to help. I'm not an end user, but I'm happy to help. I mean, I am personally an end user.
Yeah. My only question mark with the design that LF gifted the working groups is that it, what's the word I'm looking for? It envisages a technical steering committee that in practice, most groups just don't have. Most groups are operating on consent, like pure consensus, which is fine. It's just, I've always worried about the scenario where there's a irreconcilable dispute and it needs to be settled by vote, and how that's going to look when it happens, not if, but when. Yeah, it's difficult to I think we should do some house cleaning and definitely at least fill in the blanks. The larger question of whether the concept of a TSC is representative of reality in the OpenSSF is something that's sort of been left alone broadly. We did a little bit of tidying on this in the securing software repos group, in that we actually named a TSC in the document, so that it was clear if we needed to, who would vote. So I have a history in student politics. So I read the rules and imagine bad people trying to read the rules. Student politics is actually a lot like security.
Yeah. I mean, I've experienced people gaming the rules in much more recent scenarios. So I can totally see that. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah. No. And like good rules are magical. I'll let you talk in a second, Craig, but I just want to say this thing that I've seen meetings that are like literally on the edge of being technically a riot successfully make legally binding decisions because they had good rules. So, you know, here endeth the lesson.
Yeah, to echo Jacques' statement, the working groups have haphazardly worked through and adopted charters. The charter is very much boilerplate. We inherited it from, I think, maybe even the CNCF with some slight changes, and that's just a template that is given to the working groups. The working group is completely empowered to make any adjustments as they desire to. So if you want a TSC, great. If you don't want a TSC, great. But it's important to document how the group wants to operate, and when there are decisions to be made, so to give participants that structure and kind of understanding of what the rules of the road are. And I have unfortunately had the great opportunity to have need of the documented charter and have that description of who is eligible to vote. There have been certain circumstances where you do need to occasionally have a formal vote, maybe not so much in this group, but especially like when you are considering adopting donated intellectual property. There's some legal constraints you need to think through, and having that documented, who is eligible and who isn't, is important. And that might not be important to this group. So if we don't want it and don't need it, we can strike it and just say we are consensus driven. We'll have a verbal vote or a vote in email or whatever, vote in an issue. So just decide how you want to operate, just to provide structure for people they can understand how to engage.
So, Crow, though, aren't there some pretty standard ways of operating for OpenSSF and both the LF? I certainly wouldn't want us to necessarily create anything unique.
We can change whatever we want, so that we have that flexibility. Yes, the template is pretty much lock, stock, and barrel, what almost every working group just uses. Unfortunately, like this group, we didn't make a couple changes to say like what our working group name is. But generally, we want to follow the spirit. We have to follow the LF's code of conduct. I believe that's stated in the charter. And but beyond that, like how we operate, how we make decisions, how often we meet, who's eligible, that's really up to the group to decide. And we have that flexibility if we want to. We can just take what we're given and choose to devote our time more on things like the threat model, or we can spend some time in getting this parliamentary types of things set straight, so that if we have a situation in the future where we need to make some type of collective decision, we at least have that guidance of how we'll make those choices.
I think I was reacting more to your comment about accepting donated IP. Of course,
there is a process for that.
Right, that's what I mean.
Yeah, there is a process for that, but the group has to decide they want to take that direction before you can start to take those steps. We don't want any one entity to come in and kind of bull rush their way through and force something into a working group that the group itself doesn't necessarily want to do. And then, once the group decides they want to do it, then we will go through and, work with LF legal or whatnot for that particular transfer in a situation where like software is being donated. But, if this group wanted to do personas, we wanted to spin up a SIG around personas, that's perfectly within our ability to do if the group decides they want to do that and state this is part of our, as long as it aligns with our core mission here.
So is it right for me to understand, Rob, like, I mean, of course, we will be, aligning and staying within the, limits of LF and OpenSSF. But if, let's say, if we need to extend our work in a much more fashion where there is a project or a program that we want other group to engage in, like Alpha Omegas, mentorship or something that we can engage and let them have hands-on practical look at the threat model and have it on some infrastructure, something like that, right? In that case, that we will be going with the LF and all of the stipulations and the legalities and whatnot. But we're not going that far. Is that
no?
And
again, the charter is the rules of the road of how this group wants to conduct itself and how we operate. That doesn't preclude us from collaborating with other projects.
Okay.
But again, like if there's something like a member wants to donate software or hardware resources or whatever it might be, there's a process for that, and we need to follow that. Right. But if this group wants to just do verbal votes on things, write that down in the charter if that's what we agree on. Or if we want to get it formally documented in a GitHub issue, or it goes out through an email, you just want to, again, provide those constraints so that people understand and they can feel free that they are empowered to participate.
I think we should scope things out, like what comes into the scope of it and what we would like to see it as a boundary to it, and that makes us to look in the technicality of it. Yeah.
And most of the work of the foundation, like a formal TSC, is very heavy. That's great for a software project. So things like Scorecard or like Alpha and Omega, they probably should have and Salsa should have a technical steering committee. Right. But for us doing a threat model, the formal approval committee might be a little burdensome, might be very heavy. We might not need that much process, but the group might decide they do need it. That's up for you all to help decide.
So my feeling is that this one will need to come back again in the fullness of time, in due season. What else? Oh, I forgot. There was one that one of Australia's prime ministers used to say that was just incredibly obtuse, but I've forgotten it now. Let's move on to reports from other working groups. I see Dan has his hand up.
Sorry. While we've been talking, I thought I might take a crack at just doing a light edit of the charter document to put the specifics in there. I'm not going to invent anything, but just so that we have something to talk about, because one way, my suggestion is that actually what I can do that, make a PR, then we have something to talk about, right? And then we can say, okay, I like this, I don't like that, let's make this change, let's make this, so next working group call, maybe we can work through it and actually adopt it, and then say adopted, because it has an adopted :date thing at the top. We can say adopted that date, right? And so if you're okay with that, I promise not to invent some kind of new process in it. I'll just use the building blocks that are there already.
And is hereby made dictator for life. Just somewhere in subclause 7A II-47 epsilon tau.
The official.
That's a great idea, Dan. Thank you. Yeah, tie breaking, and he's the only voter, so it's pretty easy to tie break.
And that's a
Um,
good, thanks for volunteering, Dan, and doing this. Yeah, that's a good initial step for others to follow and propose and make amends. Yep. Thank you.
Okay. Were there any more thoughts about the charter? I see Jay, you got your hand up.
Oh, yeah, not about the charter, although I'm all about getting charters right. This is about working group stuff or SIG stuff. So when we're ready
Cool.
for that, I wanted to bring that, but you was getting ready to go there. So I threw my hand up.
Ah, smart man. That's clever. Were there any last words on the charter, or shall we move on to working group reports? There being no objections, Jay, go ahead.
Cool. So amongst the other things that I work on and help out with in the openness stuff, one of the things that are near and dear to this working group would be S2C2F. Those conversations are heating up. Melba has put together her thoughts, and just phenomenally, if you could take like a proverbial tabbing out of the framework, and we've been going through that over the last 2 or 3 meetings, because there's just so much to go through, which I think is phenomenal. I put out, every time we have a meeting, I make sure in this working group, I say, hey, we're meeting now, so come on in. But I'll say it here as well. This is a great time. We got Salsa 1.0 that's breathing a little bit in the ecosystem. This is a great opportunity for us to put some muscle and some thought leadership behind what we have going on with S2C2F. So if you are so inclined, we meet every other Tuesday at 12, I believe, and that's a Pacific time. Come on in and let your voice be heard as well. You'll see the issues there that we're working on. I think we put up I think we uploaded a copy of what Melba has for everyone to look at. And we have new threats that have been added along with our thoughts around an FAQ that's going to be written as well. And these are all things that come out of that meeting. And it's relevant to this group. This group is end users, and of course, this is a consumer-focused framework. Please come on in and let your thoughts be put down on paper. That's it.
Thanks, Jay. Great update. I see Kreb has his hand up.
I have a couple updates to share if the group is interested. First and foremost, the best working group is working on 2 new guides. One is about C and C++ compiler hardening options, which is probably less interesting for this group, but that's in flight, making some good progress. The one guide that I think would be of deep interest of this particular constituency is our source code management concise guide, talking about how to use things like GitHub and GitLab in the most secure fashion. We have some best practices we're recommending. So that work is in flight. I will give the group a link that you can take a look at where we are, and patches and comments and feedback are always welcome. We expect that guide's probably going to get wrapped up probably July sometime. We're pretty good we're close to a 1.0 draft. And then we'll be looking for additional content. Like we have GitHub and GitLab fairly well documented for the security controls and configurations. And if there are other forges that people are interested in, we would love to get contributions for how to deploy similar controls and techniques in those other environments. So any questions about the SCM guide? I'll put a link here in a second. Next up, I would like to maybe bring Jay back to the microphone. The Education SIG has a DE&I committee, and they have been operating a set of office hours, trying to engage historically underrepresented communities within open source and cybersecurity. And I think they've had a really great series of office hours, and maybe Jay can kind of share that to try to get the word out, to maybe potentially let you all take that back to your organizations to let people know this is a thing that exists. You want to take a minute to talk about the DE&I group?
Absolutely, absolutely. And Crow knows how near and dear to my heart that this is, especially when it comes to educating those, not just our young people out there that really want to study our craft, right? Is, it's always a delight when they want to study something other than psychology in school. They want to actually touch is one sincerely, I have a I could go on all day, but also those that are looking at a career change as well. Which people come into what we do a little bit later on, and for any number of reasons, and that could either be because they say, oh well, if you want job security, go to tech, or they could say, you know what, these ones and zeros actually speak to me. I'm working in this organization in HR or finance or privacy or something else, and they're like, you know what, working across and watching what these guys do, it looks really cool. I'd like to try that, right? And they don't know how to get it, how to come into the industry, or that there are different paths to come in, into what we do. The office hours are a great place for this, especially when it comes to those members of underrepresented communities who don't have the resources, and also the people to talk to. And those are, you gotta understand, right? You get out of it what we put into it. So when you see in tech, the disparity between the people that you currently see day to day and operating, and you can even see them in our meetings. Okay, if you take our meetings here in the OpenSSF as a gauge, you got our meetings are a little heavy in one way and a little lighter in the other, and that's just the fact of what it is. But you have people in your organizations, and everyone here believes in what we do and believes in the community element of it. So you all know people who want to break into the industry, point them in our direction. We got it. Also, by all means, join the office hours as well and be a voice for the young people that join. We've had 3 very great successful, 4 successful meetings already in the office hours where young people have joined, and also people who are changing their careers have joined. And they've gotten so much out of it in the way of, what does a resume look like? What kind of things should you be prepared to talk about in interviews? What should you look at as something that you want to do, right? What should discovering what your niche is, trying everything and discovering what your niche is, those things like that. And everyone here has time in the game. So you have a voice and you can offer up, hey, these are the things that I did, or these are the things that you could look for. And of course, you talk to it from your perspective. I encourage everyone to join. I encourage everyone to discover those that want to come into that meeting and join. And then also, these are good recruiting grounds for those that want to come in. Say, hey, join the OpenSSF, join our working groups, join our SIGs. No experience required. Don't worry. Within 6 months, you'll be able to talk, right, and have an opinion right along the rest of us, because that's time in. And then you'll be able to take that knowledge and then apply it to your interviews, and to think, hey, I worked, as a matter of fact, and I'm sorry, I'm rambling on because I get so excited about it, but I had one individual who only has 6 months in the game, and they were wondering why they weren't getting any looks by employers. And you look at their resume and you look at their GitHub repo and say, hey, you have an opportunity to highlight work that you actually can do and put your hands on if you choose. Join a SIG, say, hey, let me help you work on that code. Put your name in, you put your hands on the keyboard, become a contributor, and then speak to that. Use the STAR method to speak to that situation, task. What was the action that you did? And then what was the result of that action? And now you have hardened things to talk about in these interviews, that you're not just telling them what they want to hear, you're showing them what they want. So these are all areas where that we have that we could be impactful on. Thank you, Crow, for an extra couple of seconds to run my mouth. Please join the office hours. I believe we have those. I want to say we do those once a month. Don't quote me on that. Once a month, and I believe that we do them. Is that on Tuesday as well? Once a month, Tuesday at 12, I believe.
Thursdays, just during my
Thursday?
one-on-one with my boss.
Okay, Thursday. Okay, good deal. Thursday, once a month. I think we just had one last week. So it'll be in another month, we'll have it again. What I'll do, the same thing I do at S2C2F, I'll do that with this group as well. I'll post that and say, hey, we're getting ready to meet. So if you want to come on in and be a contributor to the minds of young people and the minds of those changing careers. Thanks, bro.
And then I have 3 other small updates. Yeah, any questions for Jay? Please spread the word. We would love to get as many people as possible participating, both at, bringing in new people to the trade or people that want to change skills, or we're also looking for people to assist and provide guidance for these people, these new petitioners. So, you could be a mentor potentially.
So I just have one follow-up. I think if Jay or you can share that information or the links for the office hours and stuff. And I've been part of the ADU, but we are working on the mentorship and the university programs, through Alpha. But this is good information to know to extend and be participating or requesting others who are interested to join and take advantage of as well. Thank you.
Hey, Krob, if you wouldn't mind, I'm not next to my computer.
I will track that down and put it into the notes.
Yeah, thank you very much. And Annapurna, please, by all means, reach out to either of us directly. You're doing some good work. I'd love for you to be part of the D&I SIG and things that we got going on there as well, because that's basically what it comes down to: outreach, education, and then helping the successful recruiting and retention of underrepresented communities and doing what we love and what we're passionate about. So thank you for that.
Yep. Thank you.
I'll track down that link right afterwards. The BEST working group also is putting together a developer landing page that may be of some use to the end users. So we've kind of trying to consolidate a lot of the resources and help steer that particular persona's journey towards foundation resources. So if you have comments of other useful resources or groups within the foundation, please submit a PR or open an issue. We would love to make sure this is as useful as possible. And then once we're done with the developers, we'll work on other personas like consumers or security auditors or whomever else, whether groups we want to try to address. So that one's pretty short and sweet. And then 2 industry things. There's going to be a one-day workshop Cisco is sponsoring around CSAF and VEX. That's going to happen in July. CSAF is the electronic means with which most commercial vendors produce security advisories. So not super interesting to developers, super interesting to this group, because boy, wouldn't you like to have nice machine readable security advisories when things happen. And then also in hand with that is VEX, the vulnerability exchange, which kind of helps people share their effectiveness on different things. So Cisco is sponsoring a bake sale, so to speak, where they're going to have people come in and do demonstrations and talk about these 2 standards. And that relates to SBOMs, which again is also of interest to this group. I'll provide a link to that if anyone's interested in just attending, or I can come back and give the notes. I'll be there with our OpenVex crew to kind of talk through stuff. I get to interact a lot with the CISA folks. And speaking of CISA, another area which may be of interest to this group, the foundation is participating with CISA and the JCDC, which is an organization within the US federal government, where we are conducting a workshop around use of open source in operational technologies and industrial control systems. So think power plants, nuclear plants, water treatment plants, these types of scenarios. So it's a collaboration between government, those operators, and then consortiums like OpenSSF. So if you are in the OT or ICS space, I would strongly encourage you to reach out and observe what that group's going on. And if you have, if you're very passionate about the open source piece of it and trying to help these types of systems operate and get signals around vulnerabilities and fixes, reach out to me. I'd be glad to help get you included in those groups. And I'll get links to all that nonsense here in a second.
what's going on this week? My turn, I guess. Just a quick update from the Securing Software Repositories group. The Great Artifact repository audit program is moving forward at a decent pace. Alpha Omega have been briefed and are going to go away and huddle on what they would like to fund and what level and so on. The basic model envisaged is still that we, basically by process of invitation, ask particular repos to participate. They would receive an audit at AO's expense, carried out by OSTIF. And then for findings, there would be funding for remediation, either donated to, whatever body manages that repo or to hire a contractor to do it. So that's pretty exciting because, they're somewhat important.
So how do those invitations go? Like I'm with that AO, right? I'm Alpha Omega. So I was wondering, is there a specific criteria that you have decided upon to pick, the specific ones?
No, I don't.
Invite,
I think it's apparently some funding's been given to PyPI, and it might be retroactively framed as being part of that program.
Okay.
So I think it'll just come down to willingness, really, from participants,
right.
and readiness to go. We'll probably try to pick one or two to begin with, and then roll it out progressively over time. And I expect that as awareness spreads of this program, that more ecosystems will identify themselves to the group as being interested in future rounds. One of the things that's sort of difficult to see from the outside, but definitely really exciting, is that the mission of the Securing Software Repos group to help diffuse ideas between ecosystems is actually quite successful for the ecosystems who are aware of it and participating. So I'm hoping that this effort will also start to raise awareness of folks in other ecosystems. Yeah. So that they see the story on Hacker News that Rupa Gems has been funded to get a thing, and they think, well, why not me? And they'd learn, well, good news. You can come and join in. Yeah. So that's my hope. And that's all I had there.
Awesome. I'll just follow with you. I've already updated on the Alpha Omega. So new engagements I've mentioned about are, looking at the grants towards Proximo to improve the support for Rust and Linux kernels, right? Improve the Russell's library, cryptographic library, and looking also towards options or, work on funding the security audits of OpenSSL through OSTIF, of course, and open refractory engagement to help, complement besides our Omega work. And we do have a website, of course, and it will be a cadence for updating and having the monthly updates or the work that has been done or current or existing engagements will be during the first weeks of the month. So I'll certainly post that website link so that way you will see the Alpha engagements updates on there and Omega work that is being done, like the disclosure checks or the assertions and whatnot, and iterations with the vulnerability assessments. So I'll give you the link. So those are the main things. And I think the open refractory and the step security, I think it's going to go into the way we decided it's not Alpha Omega. It would be better with the OpenSSF scorecard, and probably that team would be taking it up and following with them. So a few of those engagements, and those are the updates for this, this week or a couple of weeks that I have for you. And I'll forward you the link to upkeep with the website, and do check it out regularly and provide your feedback and make it better. We can make it better because it's a new website we had from last month. So some other eyeballs will definitely help recognize the what we don't have or what would be better for making it user friendly. And that's all we have. Thank you.
Cool. Great.
I had one more thing. I also work with an organization called FIRST, the Forum of Incident Response and Security Teams. So it represents things like vendor security teams and then also corporate information security teams, which I'm sure many of you here represent or represented. they are pondering the idea of creating a new conference. The current idea is they're going to call it VulnCon. And the idea is to get groups like FIRST that manage the CVSS standard, the coordinated vulnerability disclosure kind of frameworks, and PCERT and CCERT frameworks. Get them, get OASIS, who manages things like CSAF, get the CVE board, so get many of the CNAs involved. So they're basically thinking about having a several-day conference early next year, and specifically focused around vulnerability management, vulnerability communication tools like CVSS and CVE and whatnot, and also get community participation. So things like OpenSSF's OSV and OpenVex, these types of things. So they'll be formulating this conference. And if anyone is interested in participating, I'd like you to reach out to me and I'll put you on the list as that develops. I'll keep you apprised of kind of when, where, and how that's going to happen. And again, worst case, as you know, the consumer perspective, standardization of these things will be very useful for you all to consume and understand. Like I think we're going to try to get Alan and the SBOM Circus to come do some talks too. But there's a lot of things that touch on end users that might be of use. So whether you would want to participate, like maybe you want to do when they have the call for papers, you might want to submit an abstract, or maybe you just want to observe and listen and digest the output of that conference. Let me know, and I'd be glad to keep you aware as that develops.
Thanks, Curb. I'll just make a quick joke that I'll go if there's a rap battle between CVSS, SSVC, and EPSS. Not likely to happen. We are almost at time. Dan, will there be enough time for your item, do you think? In the other business?
It's really just 1 second. If I can find the link. Just to note that W3C is doing a workshop. This is not the official link. This is the GitHub link that I found, unfortunately, but I'll find the regular link. We're doing a workshop with W3C, OpenSSF, OWASP, and OpenJS, which is focusing on web developer security. And this was supposed to happen in June, but we didn't get enough paper submissions. We think probably be because it was going to be a physical workshop rather than a virtual workshop. So we've now reimagined it as a virtual workshop. It's going to happen in September 26th through 28th, and happen over 3 days, where we're going to have like 1 hour or 2 hour sessions, or one on each day. And the paper submission deadline has been extended until end of July. If anybody has interest in JavaScript security, web application security, how these things fit together between new security standards and what we're doing, more focusing on the software supply chain side of things, this is intended to be a forum to have those discussions and to get people talking to each other. So I'm personally very excited about it. I hope any organizations here that can participate, it would be great. And if you have questions on it, please come to me.
Cool. All right, folks, we are at the top of the hour. Very productive session. Thank you, everybody, for participating today. Our next time, of course, I believe will be in 2 weeks. Don't forget to check the notes for things that you can join in. We had lots of calls for action today. Hope to see you again soon. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks. Thank you, Chester.